What is up, and welcome to another video in the Better Mix series. This week we are going to be working on mixing keys inside of GarageBand and making sure that the keys are kind of poking through and heard, but not going to mess up any of the instruments we've done so far. Before we get into that, if you haven't downloaded my Ultimate Vocal Preset Bundle, I highly recommend that you go and grab it at www.cellarsound.co/free presets, or click the link in the description. If you're a little confused on EQ or compression and what settings to do, and if you want to use saturation with your vocals, I created a completely free preset bundle that you can load into GarageBand and Logic if you ever decide to upgrade to Logic. And it helps you kind of get a quick understanding of how you're supposed to EQ, how you're supposed to compress, and how you're supposed to add saturation. If you click the link and go grab those presets, it also comes with a free training video that walks you through how to put them into your computer so that you can access them very easily. And it teaches you how to manipulate them slightly for your own vocals so that they'll work for any vocalist that you're mixing, whether it's yourself or a client or a friend in your band. So go grab that at www.cellarsound.co/free presets. All right, let's get into this mix. So last week we worked on some bass and some acoustic guitar stuff, and this week we're going to kind of finalize the mix working with keys. In this track we have B3 organ and Rhodes. These were recorded pretty well, they sound pretty good, but we need them to be as aggressive as the rest of the mix is. So let's just play what we have so far and take a listen. All right, so the mix is sounding pretty good. The keys, I can actually hear them pretty okay. Everything that we've done in the mix has kind of allowed them to poke through, but you can hear that they're not quite as aggressive as the rest of the track. So everything sounds nice and mixed and full, and the keys just sound a little bit underneath everything. Like they don't have that same energy. So we want to match what we've done throughout this mix. So we have a B3 organ here and a Rhodes. Let's listen to this B3 organ. All right, so this sounds pretty good. The first thing I know that I want to do is it's a little bit harsh whenever it goes to those higher keys. So we're gonna go ahead and grab this EQ and just polish that out a little bit. Luckily, there's not a lot of low-end information in this organ, so we're not gonna have to mess with it. But most of the time with B3 organs, I'm always EQing somewhere between 900 to 2 to 3K just to get that harshness a little bit out and to just round out the sound so you hear everything nice and balanced. So we're going to grab one of these bands here. I'm going to tighten up the Q just a little bit because I want to find the frequency that's kind of just a little bit too harsh to my ears. That's the note right there. This what are we at here? 1.1K. This just gets a little bit crazy. So we're gonna bring this down, and I'm gonna widen the Q just a little bit, make it a little more musical. And I don't want to cut too much out of it because if you cut too much, it really ruins these organ sounds. So you just want to be gentle whenever you're cutting these harsh frequencies. All right, cool. So that's in a pretty good spot. I really like that. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is I want to add some saturation to this organ. I do this almost every time with organs because I kind of want a more analog-ish type of sound. So we're gonna add some saturation, and we're actually going to use one of my presets from my Ultimate Vocal Preset Bundle. So we're going to go to Distortion and Distortion 2. This is, in my opinion, the best distortion in GarageBand. Distortion 1, there's just a tone in it for some reason that I don't like. And I have these presets here, and I probably, let's just pick one. Let's go with heavy distorted vocal effect. And let's hear how this sounds. Sweet. That sounds really good. It's just giving a mix of about a 60% distorted and then the rest dry. It's really nice. This is a really good plugin and a really good preset. I've used this not only for vocals but on stuff like this, because this heavy distorted one, and then there's also a warm vocal that's really nice if you're just looking for a little bit of saturation, and it works really well. And you can hear, if I turn this off, we'll listen to it without it. It sounds kind of balanced and normal, and then I'll turn this on. And you can hear it's just giving it a drive and a little bit of aggression that we want out of this track. Okay, and the next thing I'm going to do is I want to add, everything else in the mix is pretty standard as far as it's in its place, and I want some movement, and organs are really great to add movement, to have just, I don't know, some interest in your track. So I'm going to go to modulation here, and we're going to go to rotor cabinet. This is a really fun, very simple stock plugin here. Let's listen how this sounds. And all it's doing is adding this kind of slow speed. So I don't want this completely on the track. I want to kind of mix it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click my B3 organ, and I'm going to go to new track with duplicate settings. And we're going to call this track B3 rotor. I'm going to option click and bring this guy down. So we have basically two of the same exact versions of this organ. And I'm going to go to our first organ and take away our rotor cabinet. And then this allows me to have my B3 sound with that kind of rotor in the background just moving around. So let's mix this in together. It just sounds cool. Sounds really cool now. Let's turn off this B3 and hear it by itself. Sounds good. Just kind of normal. And then we turn on our rotor. It's just fun. It adds just a little bit of life to this organ. And that's the organ sound. Let's mute the Rhodes and hear it in the track and kind of mix it in here. Awesome. Sounds really good. All right, let's move on to the Rhodes. Let's listen to what this sounds like. Cool. So pretty simple Rhodes sound. I already know when I hear this piano, this Rhodes, that I have a lot of kind of low mid information. And we've talked about that throughout this mix series about how the guitars are really taking that up, and we don't want the acoustic. We took a lot of low mids out of the acoustic so that these electrics can really shine through, and same with the kit. And honestly, the low mids in this Rhodes sound really good, but they're just going to muddy up the mix. So we want to just lower those low mids so we can have those higher notes kind of peek through, just to keep the impact of the rest of the track. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's bring up our EQ on the Rhodes here. And the first thing that I know I'm going to want to do is have a low cut here. So I'm going to push play and find a good spot for this low cut. That's fine. I'm just going to make sure there's no rumbly stuff that's going to come through randomly. And I know it's going to be in the low mids, so I'm going to grab this guy and kind of sweep around between about 100 to 400 and try and find the frequencies that I know is just too much and I need to cut them. All right, so I can hear it's pretty wide here between like 150 maybe and 250. So we're going to widen this guy back out, and I'm going to cut some of this. All right, perfect. All that's doing, again, is just leaving room for the other instruments to kind of breathe a little bit, and we can make this Rhodes kind of peak out at times, because in this track, the band has these big notes, and then the Rhodes kind of comes in after those big notes, and so this will make it pretty effectful. So that's the only thing I really need on the Rhodes, because I was already hearing it within this track, so I don't need to add anything or take away anything, because the Rhodes itself sounds really good. Let's take a listen to everything with our organ and Rhodes. Okay, sounds pretty good. The only thing that I want to do is I want to exaggerate the space of where the organ and the Rhodes are. So I'm going to pan this Rhodes about halfway to the right, and we're going to do the same thing with this B3 organ. I just want to make sure I don't know, I want to kind of separate the organ and the Rhodes, and then this rotor is kind of going back and forth left to right, so it's not that big a deal. And let's just see if this helps us out. All right, so this is big, because what this is really doing is leaving room. We don't have a vocal on this track, but if we had a vocal, it'd be leaving some major room straight down the middle for the vocal. And it also kind of separates the Rhodes from the guitars. The guitars are really wide and all that, and these aren't quite as wide. We're kind of just sort of putting them in their space, and it works really well. Okay, so we're going to do one more thing. There's such nice space throughout all these other instruments and the drum reverb and all that stuff, and I don't like to go too crazy with instrument verb, but I love having a nice space in the track and kind of creating more depth of space. So what we're going to do is I'm going to solo all of our keys, so our organ, our rotor, and our Rhodes, and I'm going to bounce just these sections, and then I'm going to use that track to have my reverb, because I don't want to come down. If you've watched any of my videos, I never do this. I don't want to come down and just hit master echo, master reverb. These reverbs just sound very plain to me, and you can't really affect them quite as much as you can having the separation of this extra guitar delay, having the snare reverb and the drums crush. All this stuff makes a big difference to how your mix sounds and the space that you're creating. So whenever I'm doing this, I always tell you that you need to go to Preferences and make sure on Advanced that this Export Projects at Full Volume is not checked. It is off, because I want to preserve the exact mix I have with these instruments for my reverb, and I don't want this to add any limiting, and that's what this is going to do. It's going to auto-normalize it. It's going to turn it up really loud, and we don't want that. So make sure that's off. And then I'm going to go to Share, Export Song to Disk. I'm going to save it to my downloads, and we're going to call this Keys Verb to make it easy, and hit Export. All right, now that is exported, I'm going to go ahead and grab it from my downloads here, keys verb, and I'm just going to drag it in, make sure it's at the top of the track right there. And I want to solo it and make sure that there's nothing else. I didn't have anything accidentally soloed or whatever, so let's listen to it. Cool. It sounds just like the keys. Okay, so now I'm going to add some reverb. So I'm going to go to the reverb, platinum verb. I really like this verb inside of GarageBand. And I'm going to click on low soft verb. This is going to be nice, I think. And let's just see how this sounds. I'm going to turn the dry percentage all the way off, which dry is just what this track is. So we turn that to 0 so that we just have our wet, which is just the reverb. Cool. This sounds pretty good. I already know that I'm going to want to take off some of that low end. So let's bring this to about 200 hertz. I don't want to muddy up this mix, and reverb does that pretty quickly. So just looking at this verb, I just added some pre-delay and a little bit more reverb time. Pre-delay basically is the time it's going to wait to play that reverb after it gets the signal. If you have your pre-delay at 0, a lot of times it can make your mixes kind of washy, and your ear doesn't really distinguish the separation between the instrument and the reverb. And so this allows just depth. This is just adding depth to your mix. It's really powerful. This is the most powerful thing about reverb is the pre-delay. So let's listen to the keys with their reverb. Sounds pretty good. Let's listen to it with the mix. All right, other than that, Tom being a little too loud, but that's okay. Sounds really good with that verb. It just, again, created just some space there. Let's listen to it without the verb. And let's turn that verb on. This is very subtle, but it sounds nice. We could actually use just a little bit more on this track. Sounds really good. All right, one thing I want to do, since we're at the end of mixing all these instruments, is I want to turn off everything we've done so we can hear the song how it was on day 1. And then I'm going to turn everything back on so you can hear where we have gotten to. All right, so I went in and turned off all of our plugins, and I muted anything that we added extra. So our delays, our reverbs, rotors. Let's listen to how this sounds. All right, so definitely a little rough. Definitely everything's super dry. There's no attack. It just sounds like kind of a rough recording. Now let's turn everything on. All right, I've gone through and turned on our reverb, turned on all our plugins. Let's listen. All right, that is a massive improvement. I can hear every single instrument. Everything has the same aggression and excitement. There's moments where the Rhodes is coming in and the B3 organ's kind of pushing and pulling, and you can hear everything. It sounds awesome. And this is all completely attainable by you. Like, you heard the dry tracks. It was nothing spectacular, nothing that sounded amazing. It was just a bunch of random instruments all thrown together and kind of recorded okay, but not super great. And we were able to come in here on a completely free program with completely free plugins and made it sound like that. And that's what I want for you. That's what this entire mix series is about, is to get you to this point, to grow your sound and to release it to people, to your family, to your friends. That's my biggest goal with this entire thing. So hope you enjoyed that video. It was such a fun one to make. Next week we are going to go through mastering. So I'm gonna show you how to master this track and some really cool concepts for all your masters in the future while you're making music and mixing music. And definitely, if you're a little confused on EQ, compression, saturation, go grab my Ultimate Vocal Preset Bundle at www.cellardoorsound.co/free presets. It's completely free, and it comes with a training video that shows you how to load them into GarageBand, and it shows you how to manipulate those presets to make them sound awesome for your vocals. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you just incredibly for making it this far, and I'll see you next week.